could you walk us through the chronology of where you started, about how much time it took at each position, and where you are now?
Absolutely, and sorry everyone for going so fast through this. So did 3 internships at Microsoft in my college.
Yep.
Started at L60, was there for a year, got promoted to 61, was there for a year, quit Microsoft, joined Bolt as an L4, was an L4 for about 1.5 years, got promoted to L5, stayed there for 6 months, got promoted to manager for about 9 months, and then started managing a manager. I became an L6 throughout that process, and then after about, call it a year of managing managers, I was promoted to L7, so senior engineering manager. And then I was hired, diagonally is actually the best word, as L8 equivalent director at Human Interest. Director of Product and Engineering is still, I'd say, call it L8. So I've done that for about a year and 3 months now. So all in all, I've been working for about 8 years. I graduated college in 2016, and yeah, currently in L8.
Damn, 5 levels, L3 to L8 in 8 years.
Yeah.
You're gonna see this, but Neeraj has had quite a journey in tech, so why don't we start from the very beginning,
Totally.
wherever you think that might be,
Yeah.
and walk us through how it started.
Absolutely. When I was deciding what I wanted to study in school, I remember my mom had told me that I could either go to Harvard or UT Austin. So she was like, I'm not paying for you to go to private school if it's not basically an Ivy League. Sadly, I did not get into Harvard or Wharton, so I ended up going to UT Austin, but I studied electrical engineering and computer science.
Did you want to do like circuitry and actually hard math and science, or did you know you wanted to go to CS?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So I remember taking, I think it was called Intro to Computing, and so we were basically coding in assembly, basic C. To directly answer your question, I didn't really know that I wanted to be in quote unquote the CS or the typical tech job until I got my first internship. So freshman year, they had some career fair thing going on. I talked to Microsoft, ended up doing my interview, and it was basically just me talking about how I had a tennis racket stringing business when I was in high school.
Wow.
But literally, we just talked about that for 45 minutes, and
Nice.
then I somehow got an internship offer. So then, like moving out to Silicon Valley, I was in their Mountain View office my first summer. That's kind of when I was on this trajectory, and then I knew I wanted to do the more traditional CS path.
Okay, nice. So you did 3 internships at Microsoft, ended up going back full time.
That's right.
And that's where you started your career. And I think what I want to focus this video mostly on is that we're going to see you've had a lot of hats over your career, maybe some lessons of the journey at each of the things. You started off as an IC, SWE 1, and now we're going to find out what you are today. Like, kind of walk us through that.
Totally. So actually, going back to my point earlier, I told them because I'd done 3 internships, I want that to count as a year of experience. And so
nice.
they started me at level 60, or well, I don't know the Microsoft stuff, but one above the entry level.
Cool.
And so that kind of like put, pressure on yourself, right? You're putting sort of a signal saying like, hey, I do want to like be able to come in very quickly and like get meatier projects from the get-go. But it was nice because I'd already ramped up. I knew the team, I had relationships, and so I kind of figured that would be the case. And I think like it's a pretty common theme that you'll hear from my career journey is that I've always wanted to move really, really fast. So when I was at Microsoft, there was this new initiative. It's going to be funny talking about it now in 2024, but this is back in 2016.
Yeah.
That was called PowerPoint Designer. So the idea was like they wanted to help format your PowerPoint slides. So you had a basic, boring like black text, white background. It would do things to like make it look visually appealing. It would make little smart art stuff. So I actually got to work on like the nascent like AI team over there. So we were doing like NLP related stuff to like turn your bullet points into icons. And again, no shame or shade trying to be thrown here, but like when I went to startups later on in my career, I found that most people were like very, very driven, passionate, very willing to work 80, 100, whatever, 100 hour week. Microsoft wasn't necessarily that case, right? Like I think they'd established a system such that they could be lucrative, very successful without needing like heroism from their individuals. But anyway, I wanted to be a hero. And so I found that like it required me to personally go out and like do a bunch of things that I wouldn't necessarily have my coworkers doing as well. One great example of that, it was like Microsoft would give us like 10 grand a year to spend on education.
Yeah.
So I went to Stanford and I took like this AI certificate while there. So I would just commute from like Mountain View to Palo Alto, yada yada. That was amazing. Like that was like so much fun to have like Microsoft being able to back me up on that. So the money part of it wasn't really there.
Yeah.
I got obviously access to Stanford, best like one of the best universities in the world. Anyway, so I was there for 2 years and I kind of started getting a little bit of a startup itch. Like I was living in San Francisco, I was commuting down to Mountain View. I had some friends who had joined startups. I really do want to say like my time at Microsoft was amazing. Like I really got to learn what it took for these very, very large companies to be successful. So I wanted to try like the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Seed company, less than 10 engineers, and I wanted it to be in San Francisco so I didn't have to commute anymore.
And so when you left Microsoft, you started off 60 and you ended
61. I got promoted. Yep.
Okay.
So I was a SWE 2 at that point.
And that's when you entered Bolt.
Correct. So at Bolt, I joined as L4.
Yeah.
So L4 was not entry level, but not senior at this point.
Yeah.
So this is roughly roughly like 2 to 5 years of experience, let's just say. So joined Bolt, they had 5 engineers at the time, and the thing that really attracted me about Bolt was each of the engineers had come from a different place. Another thing about Microsoft that I learned in hindsight was that there is a Microsoft way of doing things, right? Like they just have their principles, their ideals, whatever. There is an Airbnb way of doing things. There's a Google way. There's a Facebook way. There's a whatever, like all these other things. And so with that founding engineering team at Bolt, they all came from a different company. And so they had these like very different perspectives about things. So I was like, okay, I want to be the worst engineer at this company I go to next, just be a sponge, absorb it all, like learn a lot from all these other people. So I joined, there's 5 really, really strong engineers, you know most of them.
Like now that you've been at Bolt for a year, you're still a software engineer, you're L4. How is it different? What did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, I did not realize like, this is like, you need to stand up databases, you need to implement Terraform, you need to like actually understand like your query speed and all this stuff. So like you were exposed to everything basically, right? Even as an L4, like you must at least be curious enough to start asking a lot of questions. Like there's no one has time to like handhold you through this stuff, right? And so at least like you don't know anything, right? You're still too young in your career, but you should at least know what you don't know to start asking questions and then going and learning from those more senior leaders. So I think the biggest difference was just like there's so much stuff that goes into even like a simple React app. Like, okay, like how are you compiling like the Webpack bundles or whatever? Like how is it actually being served? Are you caching anything? Did not know any of that stuff at Microsoft, but got to learn it a lot at Bolt. Okay,
so chronologically, you're L4. I come in new grad, so I'm L3. We're coworkers, so you're like a level above me, working together, but then you decide to pursue management. How did that happen? Why did you do it?
That's a great question. So I think somewhere in between I got promoted to L5, so that's like our senior engineer. At that level, I kind of expect people to be domain experts. So like on the team, you can kind of jump into anything. And so our team, as you know, was called financial product. Largely it owned 2 areas, payments and risk. At a senior level, I should have been able to go between both. I did. Everyone like will tell you this, like the first management job that you get is luck. Like there's no other way around it. You have to be in the right place at the right time. My right place was my manager had just left the company. The 2 more senior people than me on the team had also just left the company. They needed someone to fill the seat and I was there. You asked this question of like, did I know I wanted to be in management? I don't know. I was like pretty nervous about that, right? It was an intentional choice. I talked to my wife about it a lot and she was like, look, like there's never a good, like you're always gonna feel like you're not ready for something, but she encouraged me to kind of jump in.
Before we learn how Neeraj continued up the career ladder, I want to thank NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. There are so many VPNs on the market, but most of them just do simple DNS filtering. NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro goes a step further and offers advanced protection from malware, phishing, scams, and other online threats. As a content creator, I need to be able to research anything, anywhere. And I travel a lot, so oftentimes sites are simply blocked in the country I'm visiting. Using NordVPN, I can go to the depths of the internet without worrying about pop-ups, random ads, or viruses. You can use it on Windows and Mac OS and relax, knowing that you're getting the best version of the internet. Lastly, the dark web is scary, with personal information like social security and credit card numbers leaked every single day. NordVPN's dark web monitor continuously scans discovered hacker hangouts and immediately alerts you if your details are up for sale. Download NordVPN using my special link in the description for an exclusive deal and 4 months extra. And so you took the plunge, you became a manager, and then you stayed in management. We'll kind of walk us through the management journey.
Yeah, totally. So was a manager, had about 6 people, Numin included, that were reporting into me. And then I remember we had just fundraised again, and my boss at the time told me the most important job of a manager is hiring. And so I had carte blanche. I could go hire as quickly as I could. And I learned how to get very, very good and efficient with hiring. So we grew the number of ICs from 6 to like 42 in about 18 months. And at that point, I was directly managing about 20 people or something at some point. And I was like, okay, I need to start hiring managers. Hiring managers is very difficult, very different sort of problem. Like you need to be able to teach them how to teach people, but you should not interfere with them. As I moved into a director, so I was at Bolt for about 5 years, so I spent a little over 2 years as an IC, management direct manager for about a year, manager of manager for about 2 years. And then at that point, I had kind of been there for 5 years looking for my next challenge. I was obsessed with fintech, so I knew I wanted to stay in fintech. Very dissimilar than my Microsoft thing where I just wanted to pick any startup. I knew I wanted to stay in fintech. And I had this really awesome opportunity, human interest that I was, got recruited for, and it was being a director. So this would have been a director of engineering, directly managing 2 managers.
So often, like personally, when I'm thinking of engineering problems or I'm stuck, I can go read code, I can go read a doc, I can go read an engineering blog. As you transitioned from IC to management and you were trying to learn, sure, you had people who taught you, your manager might have taught you, you had people to look up to. But what resources did you use to learn how to manage?
Yeah, totally. Actually, you just did a video on Ethan Evans. Ethan Evans was a GM or VP at Amazon, very, very, very influential leader, and his material is amazing. Dave Anderson is another really admired leader that I have also from Amazon. He writes a blog called The Scarlet Ink. Really, really powerful stuff. Will Larson is kind of like my favorite content creator. He wrote The Elegant Puzzle. I think it's called The Elegant Puzzle. It's a system for engineering management. He has an amazing blog. So you start to realize that like there are smarter people than me that have solved these problems before, and they write about it, and they write about it in a very clear way. You might be really stressed, right? Like, let's take anything like that could stress out an IC engineer. Like, oh, I have a deadline, like my project, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, like even deadlines and all that stuff, it is just a system. Like, were you given enough input at the beginning? Like, does the deadline actually matter? Like, is it regulatory? Is it like a fake or perceived deadline, whatever? Are we unhappy, or are we not able to produce enough code because we have so much tech debt, we have so much like trouble testing, we have so many rollbacks, we have so many incidents? Like, it's all solvable via systems, basically. So anyway, to answer your question, I read a lot, like at least 10 hours a week on these sort of topics.
And then you just experiment and try them? Because it's one thing to read, and it's one thing to try to do it, and I feel like doing it is way harder, right?
Doing it is like, I think that's kind of the point though of like why you get into these positions, that your problems are by definition solvable, right? Like, I mean, unless you're at SpaceX, like literally building rockets, like it's not rocket science. Like, you're building a ledger. Okay, there's been many people who built ledgers. You can always just go kind of like learn from them. You will be wrong a lot as a director. Like, actually, I tell my team, like, the only way to learn is to make mistakes. Right. And as long as it's not detrimental and gonna like blow up the company, it doesn't really matter, you know? Okay,
cool. So now you're director of product management and engineering at Human Interest. What does that entail? Do you enjoy your job? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, totally. So I started as director of engineering, became a director of product, I think in January of 24. So roughly 6 months after I'd started.
So exciting.
Anyway, so I didn't come from a product management background. And so that's really, really interesting as well. Like, I think a lot of product managers right now are kind of struggling because are they project managers? Like, are they actually given the time and space to go innovate, talk to customers, like really deeply understand the business? The answer is probably not, right? And I had to kind of go through my own journey of like understanding how I as a leader could best support my product managers and, really help them with that. But anyway, so director of product and engineering, which was really nice because of like one simple reason. And this is going to sound kind of weird, but having one throat to choke. So there is no negotiations that have to happen, right? Yeah. In fact, that literal thing happened where my engineers were complaining about our incoming like bug queue thing or whatever, and I had to say, hey, we're gonna just stop everything for 2 months, pay it down, and go from there, because I do not like heroism, as I said. Like, the system needs to protect its people, and that you need to invest in the system so that you don't have people getting paged at 2 a.m. and like waking up and always like, you just burn out. Like, it's not rocket science.
Yeah, makes sense. And this is like a very personal question, because maybe one day I want to manage. Like, when you said your first position is usually luck based, so let's say there's that vacancy, there's probably a couple people, but maybe like other people were interested. Did someone say like, hey, Neerj, do you want to do it? And if you said no, did you go find someone, hire externally? Or were they like, do you want to do it? But it's one of those questions where the answer is yes.
I think it's the latter, actually. It's more of like, if I had said no, they would have worked with me to figure out what my concerns were. Like, do I not like people? I think they would say, hey, look, like, you're already pretty social. Like, it's not the people part. Did I not want the responsibility? Absolutely not. Everyone, like, I'm very ambitious, right? Like, I wanted to move up as quickly as possible. Was I scared of failing? And then in that case, I can say, hey, like, I'll coach you and I'll be there with you, whatever. So like, again, as a leader, your job is to be very empathetic. Like, I tell all my managers, nothing should ever surprise you. Ever. Like, you should know your employees so well. Like, what makes them happy, what makes them scared, what makes them tick, how do you push them, like everything about them. Because that's like, that is what it is, right? You said this thing earlier, management is people. Absolutely, it is people. Because as a manager, you don't get anything done by yourself. You get your things done through your team and your people that you inspire and motivate and lead. So anyway, I think that's what would have happened.
Cool. Sweet. No other questions from me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.